Introducing a new podcast. Karen Hunter is awesome.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power. A 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. So check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Karen Hunter is awesome. A new podcast from Karen Hunter.
But Anna in Maryland wants to comment, so let's welcome her in. Anna, welcome to the Karen Hunter Show. Hi.
Hi. Good evening, Karen. Good evening, Mr. Orr. How are you guys doing?
Great. How are you?
Good.
I'm good. I wanted to comment on the whole discussion about immigration, and in particular, for folks like myself, I'm a naturalized citizen, as is my mother, but we got naturalized, way back in the 80s, where my mom basically married an American. They gave her a passport, and I was a little kid. I was 7, and they just sort of gave me a passport as well. Nobody asked any questions. There's no naturalization certificate, nothing at all. I just sort of was given an American passport, and nobody thought about it twice. And now I know other people in the same situation, and, we're also fearing for ourselves. Yes, I've been here most of my life, but who knows? Like you all just said, there is a law until there isn't a law, and laws can be changed. And I have had relatives who have been dealing with this issue for decades, trying to prove how they became naturalized, having a difficult time getting Social Security payments once they retire, things like that, because of our sort of haphazard immigration system that did one thing in the 80s. They're doing something else in the 90s. I don't know what they did in the 70s, what they're going to be doing in, 10, 15 years from now. So it's just, it's a fear across a lot of folks that live in this country that, thought maybe, hey, I did everything right, I'm safe. And now they're thinking, hey, maybe I'm not safe. Maybe I could be deported just like everybody else, because who knows what kind of laws are going to be put into place and what kind of actions are going to be taken.
Anna, thank you for calling.
So your situation is a little bit different than the person who was born here. And let's distinguish them, because someone who achieved naturalization went through a process. And during that process, if any type of fraud was committed, then the government has a right to go back in and open that and take that naturalization away. That's one of Stephen Miller's sort of pet peeves, is to start this denaturalization center for immigrants who came here. And like you said, your mom got married. I'm sure she got married for love because you were produced out of love, or whatever. You're in the family of love. I guess you came with your mom because you were already 7. But there are a lot of people who have made relationship choices who might have gotten married that might not be a traditional sense. And Steve Miller is going after them to go back and take their naturalization from them, because he's going to say there's fraud in the application process. So you're sort of fighting that. In your case, as an operation of law, anyone who's under the age is a minor. When their parents become citizens, they automatically become citizens. And so that's something that happens by operation of law. Your question is, well, what about the paperwork? And lucky for you, your parents applied for a passport. I had clients this year whose parents did not apply for them a passport. They had no evidence. Their parents were passed away. So we had to go back and get their parents' naturalization certificates, and then to apply for a naturalization certificate for them 50 years after they actually naturalized in the United States, to make sure they were eligible to get the passport and to get the real ID. So that is exactly what you said, a janky system that we sort of had, which was sort of lenient, saying, you're dependent. So we're of course going to give you this, but they didn't produce a record because they were, in short, half-assing it, right? And so now they're coming back and saying to you, well, now this is your problem decades after it happened. And one of the things about immigration, even today, we're talking about paper files. So someone had to go in the bowels of the Virginia cave and sort of look for these records to pull these records out. And that takes time and energy and money to sort of do that. So nothing happens really quickly because, immigration is working on Tandy computers. And if you don't know what a Tandy computer is, it's a computer from Radio Shack that was before all these other computers, really slow, not really fast, not really functional today.
Yeah, but to her point, and Anna, thank you again for calling. This current administration that's coming in, they don't care about rule of law.
Right.
They're building, I don't want to call them what I think they are. They're building centers to house people while they suss this out.
Right.
People aren't going to just
I think
be
you should
able
call them what they are. So those are profit centers. I hope people know.
Well, I was going to call them
prisons
something else.
in general are profit centers.
Profit
and there
centers.
are 2 companies, GOE, and CoreCivic. CoreCivic is a Virginia company that's owned by the former head of the Republican Party for Tennessee. And those companies make money off of making sure that us Black Americans and immigrants are in these prisons. And they sign government contracts, and it's just like a hospital deal. So those are profit centers, and you're going to see their stock shoot up in the stock market. And that's what they are. They are also detention centers. They're also slave camps because they're going to make them work to sort of be able to do the food. There are all of these things. And that's why when Obama came in, Obama said, you know what? We're not going to make it profitable to imprison people. That's not what prison is supposed to be about. It's about to be reform. So he ended the private prisons. And then what did Trump do when he first got in? He brought them right back. And then what did Biden do? He sort of eased off of them a little bit because he didn't want it, but he eased off of them fast enough. And now you already see the stock shooting up again.
But my point is, and let's address this, she may have a passport, but Miller will say it's invalid. And now you have to petition. But while they're petitioning, like, how does she move about the cabin if she's captured in this umbrella?
Right. So I think, so for me in the immigration world, someone with a U.S. passport who has been vetted, and in her case, she didn't achieve her passport through marriage and had it for a while. She's not in his crosshairs. Okay. It's going to be more current people. After.
But now, after they get that round, because I disagree with you. I think they've been preparing for this for before Trump.
Sure.
Since the whole T-back, they've been preparing, which is why the dominoes fell the way they did. They were ready for the Supreme Court picks. They already knew, Mitch McConnell already knew he wasn't going to let Obama sit that one. They knew who they were going to put in. Amy Coney Barrett being the least qualified to ever sit there because she was fulfilling something. They knew they had to have the Congress. They had to get rid of what's the guy, Kevin McCarthy. They needed somebody in there. And once they realized Kevin McCarthy was actually not going to play with them the way he got out, they put somebody in that's showing up at Mar-a-Lago, right? They got Supreme Court, they got the House, they got the Senate. Even though it's a slim margin in both, they still have all branches of government. His executive orders are going through there. Who's going to contend? Who's gonna check them? There's nobody to check them. There's no checks and balances right now, Alan. Right. So what makes sense to you?
So I want to pause and say there are checks and balances in the legal world. And the ACLU has already ramped up to sort of do the same things. And the same thing that happened with DACA will happen to many of these executive orders. They will die out in these courts. And so they'll have to sort of change their whole format. There'll be a lot of changing of formats. If we get to the point where it's just the president says whatever he needs to do, then we're in a different place in this country and we're going to have to organize differently. If you're in a military place, then you're in a military place, or in a states only place, because there are a couple of things in that world to sort of think about. One, while they may have been focused on immigration as an issue and know that it was a winning platform, when Trump came to office last time, he already had Stephen Miller. They already had a plan for doing that, but it was more complicated than they thought it would be. And we don't have the money. We just don't have the money, right? So the prime example I will give you is Tom Horman, who I know, who is a police officer, who follows, I don't like him as a person, but he follows constitutional rules. And they put him the ICE czar. So he's not going to be doing a lot of things outside of police work in the appropriate way. He's all about separating families. He's all about telling people that they can go back with their family in these harsh ways, but he understands the Fourth Amendment. That I will give to him. That's what I've seen from him in the past. The disorganization of the government is something that they can't fix. They don't realize how difficult it is. And here's the example. Tom Horman and the end of the Trump administration raided one plant in Mississippi. They got 200 and something odd Chinese nationals from that. They disrupted the whole town. It covered the news for days. Children came out of school. They didn't have nowhere to go. People who were paying rent in their apartments, the whole community had to stop down because the immigrants that were supporting the grocery store in the town fell apart. The meat place closed, so we had to start importing meat. And in the backstories today, we just heard today that we can't even eat the cucumbers from Mexico, right? Every day there's a list of things we can't eat from these different places because of E. coli. And we have someone who's coming to be the head of the checking the Biden administration, right, basically saying he doesn't care about rules in the first place. So at some point, people are going to die from this malfeasance. And there's also going to be this thing that companies are going to shut down. For example, in Shelby, in Tennessee, just 2 hours away from me is one of the biggest chicken plants there is, where they sort of figure out what the sex of a chicken is when they're born. And also they have these slaughterhouses. And you can't find an American in that place, right? There's not an American-born person in that place unless they're in the management building. And even then, they're not on site because it is so gruesome what happens there. So this concept, part of it is the fear. Part of it is saying they're going to do something, and part of it is having the process to do it. And until proven otherwise, I think the courts are going to stand in that sort of gap. And for a lot of people, for a lot of my immigrants who are undocumented, who've been here for 20 something years, this is what I'm telling them. You can wake up every morning and think about every bad thing that could possibly happen to you, or you can get up and live your life that you've been living in the past. And when it happens, we'll be ready to take action from it. That's a choice. And I don't think the fear choice is where they want us to be, because that breeds desperation, and desperation makes people do crazy things.
Yes, that's right. That's right, Alan. That's right. Alan Orr is here. You can follow him at Orr Immigration, ORRimmigration.com. Alan Orr Jr. Esquire.